Albert Einstein once referred to compound interest as the eighth wonder of the world, saying that he who understands it earns it and he who doesn't pays it. And he couldn't have been more right. Today, we're going to be looking at the miracle that is compound interest and how it relates to the number one killer of your wealth. Let's get started. But before we get going, be sure to like this video if you haven't already, as it really does help out the channel a lot, and subscribe with notifications on for more money-related videos like this one every single week. So the number one wealth killer is debt. Yeah, I know, big shocker, but it really is true. And today we're going to be looking at why that is. The long and short of it is having too much debt limits your most powerful wealth building tool, your income. Now, many of you may think that paying off your debt instead of investing would be a bad idea because compound interest is so powerful, especially with interest rates being as low as they have in the recent past. And it's true, compound interest is powerful. It's so powerful that I've made more than one entire video dedicated to it. And it's also one of the first examples financial advisors will use with prospective clients, with good reason. The example usually goes something like this. Jane invests $100 a month from the age of 18 to the age of 25. She earns 10% interest on that money. By the time she stops investing at the age of 25, she will have a little over $15,000 in her nest egg. Over the course of the next 45 years, those investments will continue to grow. Assuming that it continues to grow at an average annualized rate of 10% per year, she will end up having $1.1 million in her portfolio by the age of 70. That's all achieved with just 8 years of investing $100 a month. Jane becomes a millionaire by investing $9,600 of her own money. It's pretty crazy. On the other hand, we have John. John doesn't start investing at the age of 18, but instead, he starts investing at the age of 26. He also invests $100 a month. However, unlike Jane, he does it from the age of 26 all the way until he turns 70. John invests $54,000 of his own money over the course of those years and ends up with a nest egg of just under $950,000. So John ends up with approximately $150,000 less than Jane, in spite of the fact that he invested 6 times more of his own money than Jane did. What's more is that even if you extended this example further into the future, John will never catch up with Jane. He could keep working and investing $100 a month all the way to the age of 100, and Jane would still have more money than him. In fact, her lead would be even larger at that point than it was when they were 70. At the age of 100, Jane would have $19.2 million to her name, and John would have $16.7 million. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I don't know how else to describe it. It's why Albert Einstein called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. However, quick caveat, comparing someone whose income is being consumed by debt payments against someone who is debt-free usually isn't actually going to be an apples-to-apples comparison. The simple fact is, one is able to invest a little, and the other is able to invest a lot. Let's take a look back at that example we just went over. Jane invests $100 a month for 7 years, starting at the age of 18. She ends up with a net worth of $1.1 million at the age of 70. There are worse things. And just for the sake of keeping the examples somewhat consistent, let's say that John still doesn't invest because he's paying off debt. If, by paying off that debt, he managed to free up an extra $200 a year, or less than $17 a month for investing, he'd come out ahead of Jane by the time they're both 70. If he freed up any more than $17 a month, he would pass her even earlier. And given the state of the average American debt situation, $17 a month in payments is a remarkably conservative estimate. According to articles in Business Insider, CNBC, and Forbes, the average American debt situation looks something like this. About $9,000 in credit card debt, which is often split between several cards, about $30,000 in student loan debt, and assuming a used vehicle was bought, a little over $21,000 in car loans. That's around $60,000 in total debt. If we assume the average 18% interest rate on the credit cards, and a 4.5% interest rate on the other loans with terms of 5 and 10 years on the car loan and student loan respectively, the minimum monthly debt payments could be roughly $900 a month. Freeing up that much cash flow could make a tremendous difference in the previous example. Let's look back at John's situation from before and assume that his household's debt situation was basically that of the average American. John uses his $100 a month of excess cash flow to pay off these debts. Based on the numbers, it would take him roughly 6 years to become debt-free, and this is assuming he didn't work any extra hours or sell anything to get out of debt faster. Once he was debt-free, he would have almost $1,000 a month left over to invest. If he starts that process of becoming debt-free at the age of 18, when Jane was starting to invest, he would have become debt-free by his 24th birthday. If he then turned around and started investing the full $1,000 a month, he would actually be further along in his investments by his 25th birthday than Jane was by hers. Granted, this is largely because he has invested more of his own money than Jane has at this point. Jane, by her 25th birthday, had only invested $8,400 of her own money, which is quite a bit less than John's $12,000. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? When you pay off your debt, you no longer have those minimum payments. And the money that you were using for those minimum payments can be used for a whole host of other things, like investing, or maybe a vacation, or saving for a kid's college fund, or whatever. And think of the potential payoff of this down the road if John does, say, keep investing that $1,000 a month. His net worth is going to dwarf Jane's. He'll also likely be able to lead a much better lifestyle than Jane would in the present due to his lower monthly expenses, as we just discussed. Now, of course, Jane may eventually equal him in that regard if she gets her debts paid off and keeps them paid off, but especially for those first several years after John is debt-free, it is worth noting. Because we gotta always remember, compound interest is an incredibly powerful mathematical force, but it can work just as hard against you as it can work for you. So it's important to make sure that compound interest is your ally, not your enemy. So with that being said, how do we avoid this killer of wealth? First, if you're lucky enough to not have any debt right now, research some ways to ensure that you keep it that way. If you're planning to go to college, look into ESA or 529 plans. There are great ways to start saving for college, since the money can grow tax-free. Also, look into scholarship opportunities or PSEO if you have the opportunities available. Don't be afraid to have a summer job and work during the school year part-time. For the record, this can also be a good option in high school to give yourself a bit of a head start financially, so long as it doesn't take away from your studies too much. Make sure that you always have an emergency fund. It should contain at least 3 to 6 months worth of expenses so that you don't have to take on debt for those moments when life happens, because let's face it, life happens. Make sure that you have insurance for those catastrophes that you wouldn't be able to cover with your savings. Catastrophic health emergencies are a great candidate for this. If you're already in debt, learn about how other people have paid off their debts. Then choose the strategy that's most likely to get you, and keep you, completely debt-free. 3 of the most popular strategies are the debt snowball, debt avalanche, and debt tsunami. I've done videos on all 3 of those and they'll be linked in the description below, but in short, the debt snowball is the one made famous by financial personalities such as Dave Ramsey, and it has you order your debts from smallest to largest balance and pay them off in that order, regardless of the interest rates on those debts. The plus side is the momentum you can build up for yourself by quickly wiping out those bills. The downside is it isn't the most mathematically efficient way to get out of debt, all else being equal. The debt avalanche is the more mathematically efficient option if you stick to it. It has you order your debts from the highest to lowest interest rate and pay them off in that order. This is again regardless of the size of the loan itself. The upside is the fact that you'll be paying less in interest over time, and the downside is in some situations it may take a while to get rid of that first bill. For those who are more motivated by seeing the balances of the debts themselves going down, this may not be much of an issue at all. For those who are more motivated by the lowering of bills, this could be a bit of an issue in some situations. The debt tsunami has you order your debts from the most emotionally stressful to the least emotionally stressful, and pay them off in that order. In some cases, this could mean paying off the largest balance that also has the lowest interest rate first. However, in my experience, that's not commonly how it goes. Most of the people that I've seen use this strategy tend to use it because there are personal loans between family or friends that are causing a lot of stress in the relationship. And the person with the debt uses the debt tsunami to get rid of that loan first, and then often switches to a different strategy such as the snowball or avalanche after that, which is another viable option for many people. There's nothing stopping you from starting with one strategy that will help you get going, and then switching to another that will work for you long term. I know a lot of people who have started with the debt snowball to get themselves some momentum going and knock out some bills quickly, and then they switched over to the debt avalanche once they were on a roll so that they could save on interest down the line. Another thing I would recommend looking into is the power of the debt snowflake. And if you haven't heard, the debt snowflake is a strategy where you find ways to free up money, or just happen to find money, that you can then put towards your debt payoff strategy. The nice thing about it is it works well with any of the other 3 strategies I've mentioned. Because while by itself it isn't game-changing, it does help your primary strategy do its job a little better. And as we know, every little bit helps. If you need more motivation, make sure to check out Dave Ramsey's YouTube channel and their Debt-Free Screams playlist. It's filled with a lot of amazing stories of people who are paying off loads of debt on various levels of income, and getting to see their relief when they're finally debt-free is very inspiring. You might also find their Turning Points playlist interesting. It's essentially interviews of people who have become debt-free, talking about what made them decide to go through that process and achieve that lifestyle. I'll leave a link to both playlists in the description below as well. Thanks for watching.